We are living in a very unique time in history. We have perfectly healthy 80-year-olds and buzzing 14-year-olds all living on the same planet. There is a gap of 6 generations between them. It is the moment for multi-generational friendships to flourish. I personally have some dear friends and many are close in age to me. But I also have one who is 60 years old, another one who is 37, and then a third one who is 27. And I am 46, by the way. And just like that, I gave my age away. Surveys on adult friendships find that having friends of a different generation brings unique benefits. Hello, everyone. I am Goldie, your host for today.
And I'm Lakshan. And this is episode 3 of the Mind the Gen Gap podcast.
We here at Mind the Gen Gap are particularly excited to bring you this episode because the whole foundation of this podcast began on a friendship between a Gen X and a millennial, myself and Lakshan. If you can allude to this and identify a friend who belongs to a different generation to you, do share our episode with them and don't forget to subscribe to our show. What is friendship? Well, it's a voluntary relationship, remember voluntary, that entails companionship, reciprocity, mutual support, trust, and affection. It also involves poking fun at each other and having very silly inside jokes. Although the depth of friendship varies, nearly all adults, a 90% whole, believe that friendships are an essential part of living a happy and healthy life. While close friends are often similar in age, research shows that nearly 4 in 10 adults, that's 37%, have a close friend who is at least 15 years older or younger than they are. This result holds true for men at 38% and women at 36%, but it does differ by generation. Gen Xers comprise of 41%, boomers at 39%, and they are more likely than millennials because that's just a 32% to have a close friend of a different generation. This obviously isn't surprising since millennials, who are ages currently between 27 and 43, are less likely than Gen Xers and boomers to have a close friend who is that much younger to them or older. Lakshan, my first question, do you have a friend that is much younger than you?
Do I have friends who are younger than me? Yes, but 15 years younger than me? No, I can't say. I can't say as a 28-year-old that I have friends who are 13 years old. Somehow that feels unusual. Let's put it that way. But
Unusual.
yes, yeah. It is unusual to say that I have friends who are that age, but to say that I do know people who are that age, know of them, have interacted with them. I would say, yeah, I do have some of those. And people who are older, much 15 years older than me, I have plenty of those. You know that, like
Sure.
our peers being in the coaching space, a lot of our peers end up being in the Gen X and baby boomer generations primarily, right?
Correct. So you might be wondering then, why is it beneficial to have an intergenerational friendship in the first place? Apart from the fact that the older one can sometimes find themselves talking about a period of time when the younger one was not even born, assuming they are aware of everything, pun intended for Lakshan here. There are, in fact, plenty of other gains as well. But before we speak of these, it feels important at this point to address what has intrinsically and historically been happening. The system. Let's face it, we didn't structure society to connect people from other generations. The founder and co-CEO, Mark Friedman of Cogenerate, calls it age apartheid. You go to school with people your age, work for 40 years with people roughly your age, and then live in a retirement community or a nursing home with people the same age. We have a strong tendency to discourage intergenerational friendships and relationships. Throughout our life, at school, at work, and even in retirement, we are categorized and funneled into age appropriate groups and relationships. Is it not outright discouraged, but it's certainly unusual for people to have close friendships outside a rather extraordinarily thin age band? And research actually points out that 80% of our friendships are with people within a 10-year age range of our own. I also want to point out the fact that we generally develop our values and personalities in our teen years. But if we are limiting our exposure to only people of a similar age, how do we get exposure to broader perspectives? So, organically, we are not raised to become friends with people from an age diverse bracket. We've created a society where people of different ages have relatively little contact. Could this be making us subconsciously ageist? What are your thoughts on this, Lakshan?
Well, the first thought that came to my mind when you started sharing the importance of friendships in general was I believe it was by Harvard, no? The study on longevity and how it's relationships that are like the primary marker of happiness, I believe, right? So that's the first
Yes.
thought that came to my mind. And when you mentioned that 80% of our friendships are within this plus or minus 10-year age range of our own. And that's also how we end up developing our values and personalities. It really resonates with me, Goldie, because I've always felt like being a millennial myself or on the border of Gen Z even, I can't say I've really ever felt um, that way in my thinking and my values. I suppose it's because I've been primarily surrounded by people who are older than me or people who I've um, looked towards for examples. And I suppose that's a reason why I don't feel like I fit the typical millennial or Gen Z in terms of thinking, right? But yeah, I can see how that is the case for a lot of other people in other age groups. Uh, and yeah, I think inevitably, unknowingly, we are finding ourselves in a situation where we are ageist.
Yeah. And as you were speaking, I think you're demonstrating yourself the value that you're gaining from having these diverse uh, age brackets surrounding you, even from a very young age. So, what has actually changed today? Well, we are living in the most age diverse society in history. Half of the children born after the year 2000 are projected to see their 100th birthday. Wow, right?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. And this explains the next piece of data. Something that did not exist a century ago is that we are seeing up to 5 generations working and living at the same time. And this brings me onto the first advantage of having friends from different generations. According to a study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, diverse social connections can lead to more creative and broad minded thinking. This is by Williams and O'Reilly, 1998. When we interact with friends from different backgrounds and ages, we are exposed to new ideas, beliefs, and ways of life. This exposure challenges our preconceptions and often leads us to deeper understanding of the world with the people in it. It encourages empathy and tolerance, as understanding different perspectives can help reduce prejudices and stereotypes. There is a wonderful example I can personally offer here that echoes from my own experience. I began work at the age of 22, and one of my colleagues at the time was 33 years old. She had been married for a few years and was expecting her first child when I met her. Soon after I began this job, I got engaged to my husband. Her friendship served me as invaluable support for that period of my life. I was nervous. I was transitioning so young towards marriage, and she effortlessly offered a gentle cushion to all my worries with answers that I do not think anyone of my own age would have given me. I feel there is a sense of creative pooling that occurred in that period of my personal life. I had a manager who was in her 50s, and she too provided me a safe space to voice my out of the box ideas. I worked at a bank, but I felt I brought more to numbers than the table. Her encouragement enabled my creativity. And interestingly, Gallup's research on employee engagement finds that having a best friend at work is a key element in productivity, innovation, and idea sharing. Given these findings, it's safe to assume that intergenerational friendships have the potential to dampen age related difficulties between colleagues and increase the chances of productive collaboration across age groups. So, in the context of friendship, this means that your diverse group of friends can offer a unique insight and solution to problems, drawing from a wide range of experiences and knowledge bases. The common notion I pick up here is the idea of everyone wanting the same thing or having a common purpose, irrespective of your age. Lakshan, you actually work with individuals from older generations to your own. It's pretty clear that the only way to develop an age diverse mindset is being in close proximity and having a common purpose. Can you tell me more about your experience in this context and any stories that echo this unanimous purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was listening to you speak, Goldie, there was this, I won't say an incident, an experience I had fairly recently. It's with a very dear friend of mine, someone I've gotten to know only 2 months ago. Actually, I've only known this person for about 2 months, but we gotten fairly close, and she's about in her mid 40s, right? And one thing that she says to me specifically, like while I'm someone who has a lot of potential in terms of like work and whatever else, that there are certain things that I will not be able to understand, and I will find myself facing a roadblock inevitably, simply because I don't have the exposure or experience, and that is what sets people who are older than me apart from who I am and where I am rather, right? Because being able to navigate certain things, it doesn't matter how much, how skilled you are, how much talent you are, how what level of understanding you have. Certain things you only get through experience, and I can either um, learn from that person's experience and try to embody it and accommodate this mindset for myself, or I can toss it aside and say, no, 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 I'll figure it out on my own. And inevitably, I'll go about learning it a few years later, having made a lot of mistakes along the way. So, if there's anything I would say in terms of developing an age diverse mindset, it is that the more you expose yourself to different age cohorts and the more open and receptive you are, the quicker you can introspect, self reflect, and make pivots for you to get closer towards the goals that you want to achieve or the person that you want to become.
Wow. That's a lot of wisdom I pick up with your response, and what your friend said is absolutely true to the T. I resonate with that myself. I think as you spoke, it reminded me of my 22-year-old self and what I was learning at the time. Indeed, wasn't in any way reflective of my time. It was about someone else's journey, but me feeling that much more safer, knowing that I have someone on my side to just maybe, facilitate me through the journey with their own experiences. So I think it's pretty clear, right, that the advantages of having age diverse friendships are multiple and many. If there is, I think, one overarching benefit that comes to mind as we've been speaking, and I will say this, is personal growth. Growth for me is the ability to learn from others and apply new discoveries in my own life. Pretty much what you've shared from your example. And this is accentuated when you have exposure, again, as you said, to learn from individuals who are older or younger than you. Growth for me is also acceptance of realities that just cannot change in the most obvious way. And the example I want to give here is of our body and what can we do with it. In many ways, if we have friends who are older than us, this helps us to see aging in a much more positive light. And, research backs this up as well. Adults who have close intergenerational friendships are more likely to report having positive attitude about aging, that's 69%, than those who don't have these types of friendships. That's a pretty important figure right there for you. And, Lakshan, I think we've spoken about this once before. In my world, the idea of aging is far more visible now as, my elders have entered into health declines, both mental and physical, since a while. And I'm talking about parents, my own as well as my husband's. I know that this is not a context that you see so frequently, yet I do remember you finding this conversation valuable, and it gave you the opportunity to view your own grandparents from a very different and sensitive position. So could you share some impressions on that with us?
Yeah, yeah. I remember this conversation, and my impressions back then. Before I go to what it was back then, I want to go a little further back,
Mm.
because I was always under the impression, being young and arrogant, that people who are older, one of the reasons that they face age-related issues or any health uh, issues is because they had not taken care of their body enough, because they weren't aware of what are the things that they have to do. They didn't take care of it enough, or because of the kind of times they were living in, the kind of work that they had to subject themselves to, maybe it wasn't conducive for their health. So that was a notion that I held, I won't say very strongly, but strongly enough.
Mm.
But when I speak to my mom, she would say that that's not the case at all, because back in their time, my when my mom was growing up, and even her parents, right, they were far more active than we are right now today. I'm speaking about our generation primarily, because I think yours is the one that is the sandwich generation for a reason, right? Because you are like both, you have one foot in both waters, right?
Mm.
So in my generation and the subsequent ones, she used to say that the reason for that is because, of course, the work that they had to do, and also the quality of foods that they had back then.
Mm.
So she would say that they had much higher quality of foods, which is why even at this age they're able to do what they're currently doing and able to manage the way things are for themselves now without having to take excessive medication or any kind of medical uh, interventions. For example, my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad, he'll be turning 90 sometime next year, I believe. He doesn't take any medications. He's been into yoga since he was God knows how old, and that's sustained him until now. Very healthy he is, and my maternal grandparents as well. Of course, my grandfather does take the occasional medicine, but when I first saw my paternal grandmom, this is my dad's mom, about I think sometime last year. It was, I think that's when we had this conversation, right? It, for the first time, made me think, okay, damn, she's actually aging.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the same vitality she had before. I can see her walking slowly, moving slowly, responding little slowly. Her that energy she once had, it's not there anymore, and it definitely gave me a jolt. And those were my impressions back then. And when she had come recently again this year, I was a lot more. I wasn't taken aback this time because I knew I came to terms with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what you say is so true to a topic that, of course, we are going to cover, interestingly, very soon again in one of our next episodes, which is multi-generational living and the empathy that is developed through having exposure to, say, your grandparents from a very young age, right? But that's obviously a conversation for another episode, which I'm very much looking forward to. But coming back to today, all these advantages, so now I wonder, but why are we not inclined then, in that case, towards forging such friendships? Historically, we understand that, the environments have not conditioned us, but now we actually have the data to tell us what actually stops us. There is a scientific reason for this. Our tendency to gravitate towards individuals whom we perceive as similar to ourselves, especially in age and generation, is a well-documented phenomenon known as the similarity effect, or homophily. I think I'm saying that right. As a trio of researchers from the University of Arizona, Duke, found, homophily limits people's social worlds in a way that has powerful implications on the information they receive, the attitudes they form, and the interactions they experience. This inclination is often reinforced when employees enter the workforce alongside their peers, fostering a desire to collaborate with those from the same generation. Research also indicates that younger individuals particularly prefer working with people in their age range. Older individuals also have reasons for not actively seeking age-diverse friendships at work. As seasoned workers climb the hierarchy, their responsibilities and demands increase, limiting their time and interest in connecting with younger colleagues. These trends contribute to a natural age polarization within the organization. So, what's the aim then? To dismantle this brain wiring that makes conscious efforts to befriend your older or much younger colleagues. That's what we're aiming for, aren't we? To dismantle this brain wiring. And my last nugget for you, Lakshan. Did you know that having age-diverse friendships makes us smarter? Does it really surprise you, to be fair? I mean, you have been in my company for a while now, and I'm sure you're noticing those neurons bursting with knowledge. Tell me, what is going on behind your humorous laugh?
You just had to say it, didn't you? You couldn't help yourself.
Well, we are talking about friendship today. And as I said earlier in the episode, the inside jokes have to come through.
That is true.
Though, all jokes aside, I won't make you answer that question. There's research coming from the Big Brother and Big Sister program on international tutoring, where even a 70-year-old Harvard happiness study does show that younger folks benefit from wisdom and life experience of older folks. And elders have much to gain also from being exposed to young people's crazy trends and impatient dreams. It seems almost quite obvious, but so many of us still need the data to believe it. And now I leave you all with a question. Consider your 5 closest friends outside of your family circle. How many of them are at least a decade older or younger to you? What if you committed to cultivating a friendship with someone from a different generation within the next 3 months? Parting reflections, Lakshan.
Yeah. Um, before I, I started laughing, I had a thought which I wanted to share with you. As you were talking about, how our environments have not really conditioned us for inter or like multi-generational collaboration or exposure rather, right? And this homophily concept reminded me of something that I remember hearing when I had attended a program conducted by Tony Robbins. And one of the few things that really stuck with me was how he mentioned that we like people who are like us or who we want to be like. So when he said this, right, we like people who are like us or who we want to be like. It stuck with me for the reason that I started to introspect and ask myself, the people I am around or who are around me rather, how many of them are like me? And I realized that a good 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 were people who are like me, and only 1 or 2 out of 5 are people who I want to be like. And I realized that, fortunately or unfortunately, the people who are like me were like me not just because of the way they thought, but also because of the age group they were a part of. And as we are talking about this topic, it just so happens that the reason that I felt that way was because inevitably people of the same age group tend to share some commonalities in how they think, right? So I actively took a call to expose myself to other people of other generations because it broadens my thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to be able to say today that I'm at a place where I'm around people who I want to be like more than people who are like me. Very, very fortunately, the people that I want to be like also are people like me. So I have the best of both worlds. So that's the thought that came up for me as you asked me for the parting reflections.
Yeah. And you said that you are fortunate enough to be around people that you would like to be like. I can echo the absolute same for you, and you're in my younger cohort of friends. So I am also proud to say that you are that 27-year-old who's my friend. And I do look up to a lot of things that you do and say and learn. And I learn from you. So I think we've just sort of demystified and dismantled this entire stereotype that has been, brewing for such a long time in society. And on that note, I'd like to thank you all if you've reached to the end of this episode 3 of Mind the Gen Gap. I've been your host for today.
And I have been your co-host for today's episode. Please, please, please do give us your love by sharing this with anyone you feel might enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for watching once again.
Muchas gracias.
I'll see you soon, the next one.
Hasta pronto.
Bye.